latest episode of the Good Dram Show with me, Chris Goodrum, coming to you this evening from a somewhat chilly tasting room as the boiler has packed up. But I won't let these small inconveniences get in the way of sharing some hopefully good drams with you this evening. So anyway, as you can see, I'm kind of flanked by several bottles here. There's a bit of a fortress thing going on here. And as you can obviously see, we're once again tasting some Bruichladdich. Now, obviously, you might think, oh, he's tasting Bruichladdich again. Well, I'll make no excuses for the fact that I have a certain affinity, as you well know, with Bruichladdich, and I do indeed love their whiskies. Although, as I've said on more than one occasion, don't just my devotion to Bruichladdich is not just blind, shall we say. They have released some what I consider to be not so great whiskies in the distant past. Certainly the first edition of the Black Arts, and if anyone can remember a certain bottling called Swilcan Bridge, yes, not so great. But in saying all of that, Bruichladdich have indeed released some absolute stunning bottlings over the years, and as I've said, I've kind of always personally preferred my Bruichladdich to just be stuck in a bourbon cask and left alone to get on with its maturation and be unfettered, shall we say. But we shall see from this evening's tasting, as we have two of those types of bottlings, and we've obviously got two that wine cask finishes. Now, as you know, they've had some hits and some misses with finishing their whiskey in various wine casks. So let's see how this evening's two stack up then, shall we? Anyway, I don't really need to waffle on about history and all that kind of stuff, as you probably pretty much know all of that with regards to Bruichladdich. So I shall introduce this evening's lineup then. Right, okay, so as I was saying, we've got two unfettered Bruichladdich. We'll be starting with this one, the 2006 Islay Barley bottling, which was bottled last year, making it a 6-year-old. This is followed by a rather magnificent old 22-year-old Bruichladdich, my favourite type of Bruichladdich, it has to be said, aged in bourbon casks and left for 22 years to kind of get on with it, So as you can see, not particularly a huge amount left in that bottle. And then on to these two here, which are two of the new, of the three, I should say, new cuvées, in inverted commas, that were released just before Christmas. This one is the Cuvée 640, which has been finished in ex-cognac casks, and this is the Cuvée 407, which has been finished in ex-Pedro Ximenez casks. So Pedro Ximenez being a sweet sherry for those of you that don't know. So I think this is going to be quite interesting. I kind of like the idea of the Islay Barley. I mean, they're not obviously the only distillery that has made a bottling from locally sourced barley, Kilhoman being the other one that I can think of. But aside from that, I mean, you've had Ben Romack, which launched a range called Origins, of which the whole idea was that they would distill a whiskey from a single variety of barley, with the idea that you could then sort of taste each of these releases and see, if the different strain of barley gives, any different sort of character and flavours and aromas to the whiskey. Why they then, after releasing two, decided to release one that had been portwood finished was kind of like beyond me, because it just kind of like, well, what's the point? That just kind of nullifies the whole whole reason for sort of doing this range of bottlings. But anyway, that's by the by. So it will be interesting to see if you know, if admittedly not having a sort of, you know, a standard, for want of a better term, 6-year-old to compare it with, it's going to be difficult to say whether a locally grown barley is going to you know, give it any different character. So we'll approach that, like I said, just as a purely standalone bottling. Then we have, like I said, the 22-year-old, which is yeah, I mean, there's just something about old Bruichladdich which hopefully I'll explain to you when we actually get on to tasting them. And then, like I said, 2 of the wine finishes. May be great, may not be great, you know. Well, we shall see then, shan't we? So, anyway, time to start with the first one, I think. Right, okay, so here we have the Islay Barley, as you can see. What did I say in the last episode of the show? Glencairns and breaking? Well, as you can see, I'm having to use a substitute. So anyway, enough of that. Let's see what the nose gives us then, shall we? Well, it's youthful, obviously. I mean, it's only 6 years old, so there's plenty of that sort of lightly oiled cereal, little bit of earth, little bit of manure, possibly. Certainly got a sort of kind of not lightly decomposing straw note, which is not unattractive, it has to be said. It's light, it's crisp, very little bit of peat smoke, but it's very youthful, and like I said, it's mainly all about the oily cereal, but it's pleasant. And like I say, it's difficult to say whether the Islay Barley is any different to the sort of standard barley that they use, not having another sort of 6-year-old to obviously taste it against. But it's an appealing nose, it's pleasant. A little bit of fruit, a little bit of coffee. Pleasant. Palate then. A little bit of oily cereal to start off with, quite a fair amount of slightly sweet rose petally mar, lovely coastal character on the middle, very bracing, very fresh. Not the most deepest of Bruichladdich, it has to be said. A little bit of floral notes, a little bit of honeysuckle coming through on the finish. Personally, I think I would have left that for a little bit longer. There's not a huge amount of oak interaction. There's a little bit on the end. You get kind of like a little sort of semblance of slightly coffee tannins, but there's not a huge amount going on there. I mean, it's a pleasant light aperitif whiskey, that has to be said. But you know, I think it'll be interesting to see how that develops over time. But at the moment, it's interesting, but it's, you know, not exactly gonna blow you away, shall we say? So yeah, a nice starter for 10. Right, big jump up in age statement now from 6 to 22, and let's see what the nose gives us then, shall we? Now, that is how I like my Bruichladdich. It just has that wonderful stewed fruit, baked apple, a very sort of, not fluffiness, but a baked character. It's just, you know, lovely and mature, little bit of honeysuckle, gently coastal, slightly floral, but depth on that is just absolutely stunning. A little bit of honey coming through, but I mean there is just something magical about Old Bruichladdich. It does have that kind of, like I say, sort of stewed fruit kind of character. Apples, I mean, what I like about Bruichladdich when it is relatively young, say sort of about 10, 12 years old, it has that sort of lovely honeysuckle, appley, green apples often I find, and a real crisp character, and as it gets older it just sort of becomes more, a little bit of spice now, a little bit of sort of nutmeggy sort of spice, not cinnamon, sort of, yeah, more nutmeggy. But, oh, that's just becoming wonderfully floral now. Like I said, honeysuckle, a little bit of leafiness now, a little bit of bog myrtle, no real peat, not particularly peated, very pure, very, very nice. Yeah, that's just classic Bruichladdich. I mean, this is what, you know, what you want. This is worth shelling out your hard-earns for. You know, this is just spot on, absolutely spot on. And we haven't even got to the palate yet. Let's get to it now then. That glides, that's so smooth, so rounded. It's very much like the nose. There's, like I said, there's the sort of baked fruit character, slightly walnutty, little bit of coffee, but very, very, very light. Lots of mature wood, slightly polished wood. Again, really, really coastal, lots and lots of salt, very drying on the finish, but clean as a whistle. But that is absolutely gorgeous. And like I said, I mean, you know, Bruichladdich, stick it in a cask, in a bourbon cask, leave it for 20 odd years, and this is what you get. And this is what I love. Absolutely adore it. So full of character and depth. Doesn't really need anything else, should we say. So yeah, hats off. That is absolutely stunning and certainly worth the 80 odd quid price tag, in my opinion. An absolute bargain. Right, okay, let's tackle the next one, shall we? Right, so this is, like I said, this is called the Cuvée 640. Aged, it's 21 years old. It's had around about 2 years finishing in ex-cognac casks. Actually called, my German is probably quite poor, so O Mensch Gib Acht, whatever that means. I had no idea. Probably should have looked it up before I did the tasting, but you know, never tend to do these sort of things. Just wing it and see. Anyway. That's enough about that. So, right, 21 years old, cognac finish. Interesting, you don't see very many cognac finish whiskies around. I've come across a few. I have to say that none of them have particularly stuck in the memory, so that's neither a good nor a bad thing, I suppose. But anyway, let's see what the nose gives us on this, shall we? It's a heavier nose, a little bit more earthy, a little bit more oak, slightly more of the toffee sort of oak variety. Again, sort of that wonderful mature sort of baked appley character, a little bit of spice, and just up above it you can get this lightly dried fruit character, which is obviously what the cognac cask was imparting. really well balanced in actual fact. The cognac is certainly not kind of swamped the spirit, it's just sort of adding this kind of light dried fruits, maybe a bit of dusty spice, but you can feel, it's just wonderfully harmonious, it's really nice. A little bit of sweetness coming through now. A little bit of granulated sugar. No, probably more brown sugar, I think. But it's just lovely malty depth to it. It's quite a broad, quite a butch. Why they gave it a German name, I suppose. Getting a bit more marzipan, a little bit more of the American oak coming out now. That's really complex. Touch of coastal, but this is really nice. Really enjoying this. Palate time now. Oh, that's smooth. That's complex. It sort of starts off with some toffee oak, but very soft, very smooth. Little bit of sort of the cognac-y dried fruits there at the beginning. And then you get the sort of, like I said, you get the sort of baked apple kind of character coming through on the mid palate, with a little bit of sort of like coastal salt, and then the finish you get this lovely mingling of vanilla oak and cognac dried fruits, raisins, spice, warm spice, and then the sort of the aftertaste comes back with the saltiness. That's really well balanced. I mean, I think even if that hadn't have been given sort of like, you know, a couple of years in ex-cognac casks, that would have been a fantastic whiskey. Obviously slightly heavier on the oak than say the 22, but nevertheless, I mean, that is just rounded, soft. Get this kind of like dried fruit sort of like sitting in the edges of your mouth, along with this kind of slightly sort of caramel toffee oak character. But it's certainly not overblown. That is just absolutely wonderfully balanced. Really, really nice. So, hats off to them for that one. Jim, you got that one absolutely spot on, has to be said. Right, and finally, let's have a look at this one. This is the, like I said, the Cuvée 407, finished in ex-Pedro Ximénez casks. This one they call La Noche Bocca Arriba. Something about the night arriving, I believe. So I know more about Spanish than I do about German, but as you can see, really nice colour actually. Well, and looking at it, you think, well, this could be really, really swamped by the PX. I mean, certainly if you've ever tasted the distiller's edition of Lagavulin, which I personally find a little bit on the sweet side. Pedro Ximénez is a really difficult cask to sort of to use because it's so rich and so sweet, that it's really easy to basically tip the balance over into far too much of the sweet sherry and not enough of the spirit. So it's going to be interesting to see whether this has retained its balance or not then. Lot of sherry, which I suppose is a bit of a giveaway from the colour. Really sweet, quite earthy, a little bit of loam, but the coastal character is kind of is balancing. There's I mean, all right, you can argue that the spirit character, that sort of wonderful dried, not dried, that wonderful baked apple character is kind of not really showing an awful lot, but Bruichladdich certainly got, or this particular one has certainly got the salinity that kind of balances up the sweetness. It's really luscious. A little bit of burnt wood, dark toffee, lots of dried fruit. Yeah, I mean it's lovely. It's good. It's certainly not unbalanced at all. I think personally, I think I prefer the balance on the cognac finish, but this is certainly not bad at all. A little bit of smokiness coming through now. A little bit of meat, possibly sort of roasted meat. But all the time you do get that elegant Bruichladdich character, although, like I said, you're not getting a great deal of that sort of expected sort of, you know, baked apple kind of character, but you're certainly getting the elegance of the spirit, and you know, it's nice. It's a nice nose. Palate then. Well, it starts off with a lot of the PX cask, the toffee, the dark toffee, the molasses, the dark fruits, a little bit of burnt wood, and suddenly the mid palate, all this coastal character comes in, and there is a little bit of sort of baked fruit character, certainly on the aftertaste. Once there's kind of like the sherry has kind of moved through, and you've then had the sort of the coastal notes kind of cleansing the palate, for want of a better word. Lovely creamy finish, really soft, really succulent, very, very luscious. I mean as a whiskey, you know, you have to say that is absolutely fantastic. The quality is absolutely spot on. There's no sulphur, there's no off notes whatsoever. I mean, that is absolutely majestic. And it works. It like I said, I mean, you would have thought that, you know, with the coastal character of Lagavulin, you would expect that to balance up the PX cask. But personally, I never found that really worked. It just I don't know. It was just ultra sweet, over sweet. Whereas this has sweetness, undoubtedly, but I think it's really nicely balanced by the coastal character. So. Yeah, not bad. I think it certainly works. That's really enjoyable. Right. Okay. So let's sum up this little tasting. Well, I think certainly 4 very, very good, very interesting whiskies. Certainly none of them duff at all. I mean, you could argue that the 6-year-old is just a little bit too young. I mean, it's interesting. It's an Islay Barley. Personally, I would have just sat in it for a little bit longer. I'd have probably bottled it when it was either 10 or 12. I mean, maybe they intend to do so. Incidentally, it is distilled from a single barley varietal, that being Chalice. So I would imagine that they're going to bring out another 6-year-old that's been, you know, distilled using maybe Optic or something like that. I don't honestly know, to be honest with you, but you know, interesting, shall we say. Whether that's your cup of tea or not, I honestly don't know. But the 22, well, the 22 is fantastic. I mean, you know, what can you say? I think I've probably said enough about it already, and it's definitely worth it. And you know, if you love your old Islay whiskies, your unpeated Islay whiskies, then you know, get yourself one of these. Absolutely stunning stuff. And the 2 wine finishes, well, I think they both worked in their own way. To be honest with you, certainly I wouldn't write off either of them. Personal preferences, obviously, for the 640. I think just the balance is a little bit better. The cognac doesn't really overtly impinge upon the character of the whiskey, and just sort of, you know, adds that sort of slight sort of kind of dried fruit character to it. So stunning, absolutely stunning. I love that. That really was good. And like I said, not come across very many cognac finished whiskies that I can remember. So that one will definitely live in the memory, shall we say. And the 407, the PX finish, probably my least favoured, it has to be said, but you know, that you can't argue about the quality. The quality is absolutely spot on, and I think it worked. I think the balance was definitely there. It's certainly a lot better balance, like I said, than say the Lagavulin PX finish. And you know, if you like your whiskies a little bit sweeter, if you like things like, you know, Edredor or Oban, then certainly, you know, this is definitely one that you would appreciate. So I think, you know, one to try. Not particularly cheap, but then, you know, Old Bruichladdich isn't particularly cheap, but I think, you know, definitely worth it. So anyway, I think that's probably about it for this evening. So you know, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the show. All of these whiskies are currently available on our website, www.gauntleys.com. You should be able to find all my tasting notes, because I had a good updating session of my WordPress blog not so long ago, a few days ago in actual fact. So I think you should find all of those on there. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show, and all that's left to say is thank you for watching. Go and get yourself some Old Bruichladdich, and good evening and good running.